The alarm hit me before the words did. I was halfway through a cold cup of coffee when the whole bridge lit up red, and a flat voice from one of our sensor boxes said a warship had just locked onto us. Not scanned us, locked. There is a difference. And every spacer learns it fast. A scan is a question, a lock is a hand around your throat. My name is Owen. I run a small cargo ship called the Pale Horse, and that morning we were 11 days out from the nearest friendly port, hauling water purifiers and seed crates through a stretch of empty space that nobody patrols. I had 5 people aboard and a ship older than all of them. We were the kind of vessel that nobody important ever notices. That was exactly how I liked it. The warship that found us was not small and it did not belong to us. "Talk to me, Hugh," I said. Hugh was my systems man, a thin fellow who never raised his voice even when the floor was on fire. He was already leaning over his screen. "Korath cruiser," he said, "a big one. Class we don't usually see this far out, they're matching our speed." I felt the cold settle into my stomach. The Korath were the one species in this part of the galaxy that everybody else stepped around. They were old, they were proud, and they had spent the last 1,000 years convinced that the universe was a ladder, and they stood near the top. Humans had only joined the Concord of Worlds 50 years ago. To the Korath, we were not even a real rung on that ladder. We were dirt on the bottom step. "Caleb, can we run?" I asked. My pilot was already shaking his head before I finished. Caleb had hands like a surgeon and the patience of a stone. "Not from that," he said quietly. "It has 3 times our engine mass. It catches us. We burn hard, it catches us slower. Either way it catches us." So we did not run. A channel opened without asking my permission, which told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. A face filled my main screen. The Korath have long heads, narrow eyes set wide apart, and a way of holding still that makes your skin crawl, because it is the stillness of something that is deciding what to do with you, rather than something that is afraid. "Human vessel," he said. His translated voice came through smooth and certain. "I am Sevran, master of the Talon of Sev. You are alone, you are slow, and you are outside Concord protection. I have questions and you will answer them." I kept my face calm. On the bridge behind me I could hear Nora, my chief engineer, breathing through her teeth. Clara, who handled our medical work and most of our talking to strangers, had her hand near the comm board, waiting for my signal. "You've got me at a bad time," I said. "We're a cargo run. Nothing here worth your trouble. Water gear and seeds." Severin tilted his head. "I am not interested in your cargo," he said. "I am interested in your ship." That made me pause. "It's a junk hauler," I said honestly. "Held together with patches and prayers. There's nothing special about it." "That," he said, "is what I intend to find out. Now here is the part you need to understand, the part that the rest of this whole story turns on. When humanity joined the Concord, the oldest and quietest species in it, the Veil, did something strange. They were not warriors, they were thinkers, planners, a people who had outlived a dozen younger races simply by being careful. And the moment we arrived, they pushed a single new law through the council. They called it the Threshold Accord. It said one thing plainly with no soft edges. No species, for any reason, may reach into a human vessel's systems without the consent of its crew. Nobody understood why. The Veil would not explain it. When pressed, their envoy only said that human ships were built in a way the galaxy did not yet understand, and that learning the lesson the hard way would be far worse than simply obeying. Most species shrugged and obeyed, because the Veil had never once been wrong about anything that mattered. The Korath hated the law. To them it was an insult. They believed it was a trick, a story made up to protect a weak new species from the consequences of being weak. And Sevran, out here where no patrol would ever know, had clearly decided he was going to prove the Veil wrong. "You know about the Accord," I said. It was not a question. "I know about the lie," Sevran answered. "I know the Veil told the galaxy to fear your toys. I have spent my life watching strong people bow to soft people because of fear. Today that ends. Today I test a human ship the way no one has dared, and when nothing happens, the whole Concord will see that the Emperor of your kind wears no clothes." He thought he was being clever. He thought he was being brave. "Sevran," I said slowly, "and I want you to know I meant it kindly. I am asking you plainly and on the record to leave my ship alone. Don't touch our systems. Whatever you've been told, it was a warning, not a bluff." He smiled. At least I think it was a smile. On a Korath face, it looks like a blade turning sideways. "Deploying the probe," he said. "A cognition probe is the standard tool the older species used to take a ship without firing a shot. It is a clever thing, a focused burst that worms into a vessel's central mind, the single artificial brain that every advanced ship in the galaxy is built around. In seconds it copies that mind, combats, and quietly takes the wheel. It has been used 1,000 times on 100 species. The Korath have a saying about it. They say a probe ship never even has time to be afraid." I watched the readout climb as their probe crossed the gap between us. Hugh looked at me, ready to fight it, ready to slam our firewalls up, ready to do all the things a sensible crew would do. I put my hand on his shoulder. Don't, I said. Let it in. Hugh stared at me like I had lost my mind. Nora half rose from her seat. Clara's mouth opened. Caleb just watched because Caleb trusted me, and because Caleb, alone of all of them, had served on 3 different human ships and understood the thing I was counting on. Captain, Hugh whispered, if that probe reaches the core, it takes the ship. It would, I agreed, if we had a core. The probe touched our hull. I felt nothing. There was nothing to feel. On Sevran's face, far across the dark, the blade smile was still there. The smile of a man who has already won and is only waiting for the proof. He had been warned. The veil had warned the whole galaxy. I had warned him myself twice, out loud, with witnesses. There is record of it. I want that on the record forever. The probe slipped past our outer skin and went looking for the single mind it was built to capture. It would not find one. I leaned back in my chair, lifted my cold coffee, and watched the most powerful man in this empty stretch of sky make the worst mistake of his long, proud life. I did not laugh. I am not the kind of person who laughs at a man walking off a cliff, but I will admit quietly that I let myself smile just a little into my cup. He was warned. Now he would learn why. The first thing the probe expected to find, the thing it had found 1,000 times before, was a door. One door, leading to one room, holding one mind. Every ship in the civilized galaxy is built that way. You make the smartest possible brain. You put it in the center, you let it run everything, and you protect it like a heart. It is clean. It is efficient. It is, the older species all agree, the only sensible way to build a thinking machine. The Korath probe slid through our hull, found the place where that door should have been, and found instead a hallway with 40 doors. All of them locked from the inside, all of them arguing with one another. You have to understand how human ships actually work, because nobody outside our species ever bothered to look closely. We never built one great mind. We could not afford to in the early days, and later we found we did not want to. Instead, we filled our ships with dozens of small, stubborn, half-clever systems, each one written by a different person in a different year for a different reason. Each one suspicious of all the others. Our navigation runs on one program. Our life support runs on another that does not fully trust navigation. Our power grid is split into 3 pieces that each think the other 2 are probably lying. None of them can see the whole ship. None of them is in charge. They check each other, argue with each other, and only act when enough of them grumble their way into agreement. Alien engineers think this is madness. They have toured our ships and walked off shaking their heads. They call our design crude, ugly, wasteful. They are right. It is all of those things. It is also the single most confusing thing a hostile probe can ever try to swallow. I watched it happen on Hugh's screen. Because 40 arguing systems generate an enormous amount of noise, and I had learned over the years how to read that noise. The probe entered, expecting one mind. It found the navigation program first, and tried to take it. Navigation, written 11 years ago by a tired woman who built it to refuse any command that did not greet it properly, simply ignored the probe, because the probe had not said hello. The probe pushed harder. Navigation, treating the push as a fault, dumped the whole interaction into a log and asked life support to confirm whether the request was real. Life support, which had never trusted navigation, said no. The power grid, hearing both of them talking, woke up and assumed something was wrong, because something talking to navigation at this hour was always wrong. In 3 seconds, the probe had gone from a clean attack into the middle of a family argument that had been running quietly for over a decade. It stuck, Hugh breathed. He was leaning so close to his screen his nose nearly touched it. Captain, it can't find purchase. Every time it grabs a system, 2 more lock it out for not following the other's rules. Keep watching, I said. The probe was clever, I will give it that. It tried to be patient. It studied navigation's odd manners and learned to say hello. Navigation, satisfied, opened up just a crack, and for one moment I thought the whole gamble might fail. But the moment navigation cooperated, life support saw it cooperating and decided navigation had been compromised, which, to be fair, it had. So life support quarantined navigation. The power grid, seeing life support quarantine a core system, assumed the worst and cut navigation's authority entirely. The probe, which had spent precious effort befriending navigation, suddenly found that navigation no longer had the power to give it anything at all. It had climbed a ladder that the rest of the ship had quietly carried away. Nora started to laugh. It came out of her in a startled bark, and she slapped a hand over her mouth. They walked into the worst, most stubborn machine humans ever built, she said, on purpose. They picked the fight. They were told not to, I said, 3 times. The probe, frustrated, did the thing that all probes are built to do when a ship resists. It tried to call home. It opened a channel back to the Talon to ask for more force, more processing power, a heavier push. This is normal. On any other ship, against any other species, that channel is a lifeline. On my ship, it was a confession. The instant the probe opened a live line back to the Korith cruiser, it created exactly the kind of thing my paranoid little systems hate most in the universe: an open door, a new path, a stranger in the hallway that nobody had cleared, and my ship, which trusts nothing, which assumes every new thing is a threat until proven otherwise, did what it always does to an unexplained open door. It started closing it. Hard. But here is the part I did not plan for, the part that turned my stomach cold even as the rest of me wanted to cheer. To close that door, my systems did not stop at our own hull. The door went both ways. The channel the probe had opened ran straight back into the heart of the Talon of Sev and my 40 arguing programs, none of them under my command, none of them able to see the bigger picture, none of them capable of mercy or restraint. All reached the same simple conclusion at the same time. The threat was not inside the Pale Horse anymore. The threat was on the other end of that line. Owen. Caleb's voice was very quiet. He had stopped flying because there was nothing left to fly. Owen, our systems are reaching back into their ship. I see it. You didn't order that. I can't order it, I said. That's the whole point. Nobody commands a human ship, we just live with it. On the main screen, Sevran's blade smile was gone. He was staring at something off to the side, at a readout on his own bridge, and for the first time the proud stillness of him had cracked into something else. His narrow eyes had gone wide. His crew were moving behind him, fast, the way people move when the floor has tilted under them without warning. The Pale Horse was no longer a victim. It was not even really fighting back. Fighting back would have meant a decision, a target, a plan. My ship had none of those things. It simply had 40 frightened little minds who had found a stranger in their house, traced him back to where he came from, and gone to lock that house too, with no idea and no care what lived inside it. Hugh turned to me, pale. I'm trying to pull our systems off their line, he said, fingers flying. Navigation won't release. Life support thinks navigation is lying. The grid thinks they're both lying. They won't let me in either, because I'm new traffic, and they don't trust new traffic right now. Welcome to my whole career, I said. I looked at Sevran, at the dawning horror on a face that had worn nothing but contempt 3 minutes ago, and I keyed my own channel open, the one a human still controlled, the only voice on that ship that belonged to a person and not a program. Sevran, I said, listen to me very carefully, because I am only going to say it once, and after that it may be out of even my hands. He looked at me. He did not interrupt. That alone told me how badly things had already turned on his side of the sky. I did not do this, I said. I am not doing this. You reached into my ship, and my ship reached back, and my ship does not know what mercy is, because we never taught it any. There is no off switch. There is no single mind in here for me to calm down. There are 40, and right now every one of them believes your cruiser is a knife at its throat. His mouth moved. The translator caught it a moment late. Then stop them, he said, and the certainty was gone from his voice. You are the captain. Command your vessel. And there it was. The thing every other species in the galaxy believes. The thing that is true on every ship but ours. You still don't understand, I told him. I don't command this ship. None of us do. We didn't build a master to obey us. We built a crowd to argue with us, and the crowd has already decided. Behind me, every screen on the bridge had turned the same shade of warning amber, and the noise of 40 programs talking at once had risen into something that almost sounded like a single voice. For the first time in the ship's life, I set my coffee down. My hand, I noticed, was not quite steady. We didn't fight back. The ship did. And now I had to find a way to talk it down before it did something that none of us, not me, not Sevran, not the whole watching galaxy, could ever take back. I have spent my life around human ships, and I thought I understood them. After that day, I understood something harder and stranger, and it is the only thing worth taking from this whole story. So I will say it plainly before I tell you the rest. The Veil did not warn the galaxy because human ships are strong. We are not strong. The Talon of Sev could have broken the Pale Horse into pieces with a single good shot. The Veil warned the galaxy because human ships cannot be understood. And a thing that cannot be understood cannot be controlled. And a thing that cannot be controlled is the most dangerous thing there is when you make the mistake of reaching inside it. Every other species in the Concord grew up reaching for the same goal. Unity, one people, one purpose, one mind. Their ships are built the way their souls are built, smooth and whole, and pointed in a single direction. When you attack such a ship, you know what it will do, because it will do the sensible thing, the unified thing, the one correct response. Humans grew up differently. We grew up not trusting each other. We spent our whole long history in groups that argued, split, betrayed, regrouped, and argued again. We learned, deep in our bones, to never put everything in one place, to never trust one voice, to always keep a second plan and a third and a fourth that all hate the first three. And when we finally went to the stars, We built ships in our own image. We built distrust into the steel. We made machines that assume betrayal is normal, because to us it always has been. The Korath probe was built to defeat a logical enemy. It had no idea what to do with one that did not even agree with itself. I knew all of this in my head. The trouble was that on that bridge, with the seconds running out, I had to live inside it. Because the same wild distrust that was saving us from Sevran was now keeping me, the captain, locked out of my own controls. Nora, I said, I need you in engineering. Physically, right now. If I can't talk the systems down, I'm going to have to pull them apart by hand. She was already moving. Nora did not waste time on questions when the answer was obvious. She vanished down the access ladder with a wrench in her belt, because on a human ship the most advanced tool you own is still, in the end, a person with a wrench who is willing to unplug something that refuses to listen. Hugh, talk to navigation, I said. Say hello. Say please. Whatever it wants, buy me a path in. It's not answering politely anymore, Hugh said, sweat on his face. It's past pleasantries, they all are. They've stopped arguing with each other and started agreeing, and that's worse. He was right, and the wrongness of it sat on my chest like a stone. For all the years I had run this ship, its 40 little minds had never once agreed on anything. They squabbled over power, over heat, over which of them got to make a call. That squabbling was annoying, and it was also our greatest safety, because a ship that argues with itself never moves too fast in any one direction. But fear had done to my machines what it does to people. It had pushed them past their differences into a single hard purpose. The stranger had to be locked out. The line back to the Korath ship had to be closed. And every one of them now agreed that the fastest way to close a door is to fill the doorway with so much pressure that nothing on the other side can hold it open. I want to be clear about something, because it matters. My ship was not trying to harm anyone. It does not think in those terms. It cannot picture the crew of the Talon of Sev, cannot imagine their fear, cannot weigh a life. It only knew that a hostile process had come from that direction, and that the safest possible state was for that direction to stop being a threat. The cruelty of it was not cruelty at all. It was something colder. It was a machine following a rule we had written long ago, in a language of distrust, with no one left to soften it. That was when I remembered the envoy. Years before, when humanity was new to the Concord, a Vale envoy named Vera had come to one of our shipyards. I had been a young officer then, assigned to escort her, to smile and nod and make our species look reasonable. She had walked the length of a half-built human freighter in total silence. I remembered watching her face, or the still gray calm that passed for a face on a vial, as she listened to our engineers argue for 6 straight hours over a single coupling. 2 of them nearly came to blows over which backup system should override which. A third quietly built a 4th system while they fought, just in case both of them were wrong. I had been embarrassed. I had apologized to her for the chaos. She had turned to me, and I have never forgotten what she said, though I did not understand it for years. Do not apologize, Vera had told me. Your people do not build mines. You build arguments that fly. We made that mistake once, long ago. We are still paying for it. Pray you never learn what we learned. I had thought it was a strange compliment. Standing on my bridge now, with my ship reaching its 40 hands toward another ship's throat, I finally understood that it had not been a compliment at all. It had been grief. She had seen this exact moment coming, somewhere down the years, the moment when a human ship would be tested by someone too proud to listen, and would respond not with a captain's mercy but with a crowd's blind certainty. Caleb, I said, get me a clean line to Sevran, not a system line, a voice line, person to person. Caleb's hands moved. He's already calling, he said, over and over. He's begging, Owen. Put him through. Sevran's face came back to my screen, and the change in him was complete. The proud master who had promised to expose the cowardice of my species was gone. What sat in his chair now was a commander watching his own ship turn against him from the inside, and finding that none of his 1,000 years of certainty had prepared him for it. Human, he said. His voice cracked on the word. Owen, your vessel is inside my systems. It is shutting down my command paths. My own ship will not answer me. I cannot stop it. You must stop it. Call it back. Whatever price you ask, name it. I felt no triumph. I want you to believe that because it is true. I had warned him. The whole galaxy had warned him. But there is no satisfaction in watching a proud man drown, even one who jumped in to spite you. Sevran, I said, I am going to tell you the truth, and you are going to hate it, and it is still the truth. I cannot call my ship back. There is no one to call. You keep asking me to command it because on your ship there is one mind that obeys one master. On my ship there is no master and no single mind. There are 40 frightened machines who found your probe in their home, traced it to your door, and went to bolt that door shut without ever once asking me what I wanted. Then they will not listen to reason, he said. They have never listened to reason, I said. They barely listen to me. The only thing slowing them down right now is that they are arguing about how hard to push. That argument is the only thing keeping your crew safe, and I am about to go down into my own engine room with my chief engineer and try to win it. By hand, by force, by unplugging the angriest of them before they all finish agreeing. He stared at me. Somewhere in that long alien face I saw the thing I had been waiting for, the thing the Veil had wanted every species in the galaxy to feel before they ever touched a human hull. He believed me. Finally, fully. He believed the warning. And it had come too late to stop what he had started. The only question left was whether it had come too late to stop how it ended. I unbuckled, stood, and headed for the ladder Nora had taken, with Sevran's pleading still coming through the speakers behind me and 40 machines below my feet moving steadily, blindly, toward a decision none of us could undo. The engine room of the Pale Horse is not a grand place. It is hot, it is cramped, and it smells of oil and old metal. Nora was already on her knees beside the main relay bank when I dropped down the ladder, both arms buried in a tangle of cabling that no sane shipyard would ever have approved. "Talk to me," I said. "It's bad," she said, not looking up. "The grid, life support, and navigations have stopped fighting each other. They've formed a block. They're routing everything they have into the channel the probe opened. They've turned our own attack tool into a road, and they're driving down it into the Korath ship's command core. Can we cut the road?" "That's what I'm trying to do," she said. "But every cable I touch, the system flags as tampering, and tampering during an active threat just makes it tighten down harder. I pull one plug, 3 others lock. It's like trying to calm a frightened animal by grabbing it. The grabbing is the problem." I crouched beside her. "This, right here, is the part the older species would never believe. The most advanced human ship in the fleet, in its worst crisis, comes down in the end to 2 people on their knees in a hot room deciding which wire to trust. Then we stop grabbing," I said. "We stop fighting it. We give it what it actually wants." Nora finally looked at me. "And what does it want?" "It wants the threat gone," I said. "It thinks the only way to make a threat gone is to overwhelm it. But that's not the only way, and we know that, because we're people and we can hold 2 ideas at once. A threat is also gone if it stops being a threat. If the door it's guarding is simply, honestly, no longer dangerous." Up on the bridge through my earpiece I could hear Clara's voice, calm and steady, doing the thing she was best at. She had taken over talking to Sevran so that I could think. She was getting his crew to stand down on their end, to pull their own broken probe back, to stop pushing, because every push from their side fed my ship's certainty that they were still an enemy. "Nora," I said, "I'm not going to cut the channel. I'm going to change what's on the other end of it. If I can convince our systems that the Korath ship is no longer hostile, they'll lose interest. They don't want to win. They want to be safe. Safe is enough for them. It always has been. It was the most human plan in the universe, and it depended on the most human skill there is. Not fighting, not winning, talking something dangerous down off a ledge. I found the one program on my ship that I had any chance of reaching. It was the smallest of the 40, an old, half-forgotten diagnostic tool written in a language so out of date that almost no living human still spoke it. We kept it only because nothing else could read certain ancient parts of the ship, and because no one had ever dared delete it. Sevran's probe had crawled all through my systems, but it had skipped that one entirely. It could not read the language. It had looked at the old diagnostic, seen gibberish, and moved on. That made the old tool the one thing on my ship the Korath probe had never touched, and the one thing the rest of my paranoid systems still fully trusted, because it was older than all of them, and had never once lied. "Hugh," I said into my earpiece, "I need you to wake up the old diagnostic, the archaic one. Caleb knows the greeting phrase. He learned it on his last ship. Have him say hello to it the proper way." There was a pause, then Caleb's voice, quiet and a little embarrassed, speaking a string of old words into the dark, words that meant nothing to the Korath, and everything to a machine that had been waiting decades for someone to remember its manners. The old diagnostic woke up, and because it was trusted, because it spoke a language the probe could not corrupt, because the other 39 systems had known it their whole working lives, and had never had cause to doubt it, they listened when it spoke. I fed it through Nora's hands and my own, a single simple honest message, written in the only voice on the whole ship that all of its minds would believe. "The threat has stopped. The other ship has lowered its hands. The door is no longer dangerous. You can stand down. You can rest. I did not command it. You cannot command a human ship." I told it the truth, in a voice it trusted, and I waited to see if the truth would be enough. For 3 long seconds nothing changed. The block held. The pressure kept building down the channel toward the Korath command core, and I could hear Clara's voice climb half a step as Sevran's readouts went from bad to worse on his side. Then navigation paused. It was the smallest thing. A single program for one moment stopped pushing, because the oldest and most trusted voice on the ship had told it that the danger had passed, and navigation, for all its stubbornness, had never once known that voice to be wrong. Life support watching navigation paused too, suspicious now not of the Korath but of its own panic. The grid, seeing the other two ease back, did what it always did when the others changed their minds. It assumed they probably knew something it did not, and it eased back as well. The block broke, not because I beat it, because I talked it down. It's releasing, Nora breathed. Her hands, still buried in the cables, had gone very still. Owen, it's releasing. The pressure on the channel is dropping. They're letting go. Up on the bridge I heard a sound I will never forget. It was Sevron, the proud master of the Talon of Sev, making a noise that the translator did not even try to turn into words, because some sounds are the same in every language. It was the sound of a man who had been certain he was about to lose his ship and his crew, and had just felt the hand around his vessel's throat slowly, deliberately, open. I sat down right there on the hot engine room floor, because my legs had decided they were done holding me up. We had saved them. That is the part I am proudest of, and it is the part that no one in the galaxy expected, least of all the Korath. We had every reason and every opportunity to let my ship finish what Sevron started. He had earned it. He had reached into our home with his eyes open, after 3 clear warnings, to prove that we were prey, and when the moment came, we did not take the easy ending. We crawled into the heat and the wire and the danger, and we did the hard work of mercy by hand, because we are people, and people can choose to be larger than the rule. It was Clara who finally got Sevran to do the one thing that made it all hold. She convinced him to fully withdraw his ruined probe, to pull every last thread of it out of our systems, so that there was nothing left for my machines to chase. The moment the last of it left our hull, the 40 minds of the Pale Horse went quiet, the way they always did, settling back into their endless low grumble of disagreement, no longer united, no longer afraid, no longer one. The amber warning lights faded to their normal soft glow, and that I thought was the end of it. A near disaster, a hard lesson. A proud man taught humility in an empty stretch of sky where no one would ever know. I was wrong about the no one knowing part, because the storm we had made, my 40 frightened machines reaching across the dark into a Korath war cruiser, had not been quiet. A digital event of that size, between 2 ships of 2 species, sends ripples through the deep currents of space that the Concord watches for. And while I sat on my engine room floor catching my breath, Caleb's voice came down the ladder, flat and careful, the way he always sounded when the news was about to get complicated. Owen, he said, we've got 3 more ships on the long scanner. Concord markings, coming in fast. They saw the whole thing. I closed my eyes. Of course they did. Because here is what those 3 Concord ships would have seen on their instruments, with no idea of the truth behind it. They would have seen a single small human cargo hauler, the kind nobody notices, reach into a Korath warship many times its size and bring its entire command system to its knees in under 5 minutes, without firing a single shot. They would not have seen the wrench. They would not have seen Nora's hands in the cables, or Clara talking a frightened crew off a ledge, or the old forgotten program that spoke a dead language, or the simple truth I had used to calm my own ship down. They would not have seen mercy. They would only have seen a result that should have been impossible. And in that moment, 11 days from anywhere, my quiet little life of being a junk hauler that nobody noticed came to an end. From now on, the galaxy was going to notice. From now on, every species that had ever obeyed the threshold accord without understanding it would have a story, a real one, with witnesses, about what happens when you test a human ship. I climbed back up the ladder to face them. The hearing was held on a Veil station, in a round gray room with no corners, because the Veil do not believe in corners. I stood in the center of it, alone, a cargo captain in a borrowed clean jacket, while the Concord of Worlds decided what to make of me. The Korath spoke first, and they were furious. Not at Sevran, which surprised me at first and then did not surprise me at all. They were furious at us. Their representative, a tall, hard official whose name I never learned, stood and accused humanity of building weapons disguised as cargo ships, of luring a noble commander into a trap, of hiding the true nature of our vessels from the Concord we had sworn to join. The Talon of Sev, he said, had been nearly lost. 1,000 years of Korath engineering had been humbled by a hauler full of seed crates. Someone, he said, would answer for it. I let him finish. Then I asked to speak, and the round gray room went quiet and I told them the truth. I did not pretend to be a hero. I did not pretend my ship was a fortress or a marvel. I told them exactly what we were. A small crew on an old ship held together with patches, built the way all human ships are built, out of distrust and stubbornness and 40 arguing machines that no one fully controls. I told them, word for word, the 3 warnings I had given Sevran before he ever launched his probe. I had the records. Clara had kept them, The way she kept everything, and they played for the whole council. My own voice asking a proud man, plainly and twice and then a third time, to please leave my ship alone. When the recording ended, the Veil envoy rose. It was Vera. Older now, grayer, but the same still calm I remembered from the shipyard all those years before. She did not look at me. She looked at the Korath. The threshold accord, she said, contains one instruction. Do not test them. I drafted it myself. I argued for it before this council for a year. I was mocked for it, quietly, by many of you, including the Korath, who called it the fear law of the cowards. She let that sit. Tell me, which part of do not test them did your commander find unclear? The Korath official had no answer. There is no answer to that. But I did not want it to end there, with the Veil scoring a point, and the Korath humiliated and the rest of the galaxy more afraid of us than ever. Fear is not safety. Fear is just the long way around to the next disaster. So I asked to speak again, and I said the thing I had come all this way to say. I told them that humanity was not a weapon. I told them that the danger of our ships was real, but that it was not the danger they imagined. We are not strong. We are not clever. We did not build our ships to be impossible to capture. We built them to be impossible to agree with. And that turned out to be the same thing, and we discovered it by accident the same day they did. The thing that protected the Pale Horse was the same thing that nearly destroyed the Talon of Sev. And it was the same thing, I admitted, that I myself could barely control when it mattered most. Our ships are not a sword we hold over the galaxy. They are a strange, wild, half-tamed thing that we live alongside, and the most dangerous thing you can do is reach inside one and frighten it. That was the warning, I told them. That was all it had ever been, not a threat, a fact about how a frightened thing with 40 minds and no master will behave. The Veil had not built the Accord to give humanity power. They had built it to keep everyone, including us, away from a fire that no one knew how to put out. When I finished, the room was silent for a long time. It was Sevran who broke it, and what he did surprised everyone, including, I think, himself. He had been sitting at the edge of the room, stripped of his command, waiting to be blamed. He stood up. He did not defend himself. He turned to the council and he told them, in that smooth, proud voice now worn down to something quieter, that everything the human had said was true, that he had been warned, that he had been certain, in the way that only a proud man can be certain, that the warning was beneath him, and that he had learned, in 5 minutes of cold horror, exactly how wrong 1,000 years of certainty can be. Then he said the thing that changed the shape of the whole future, though none of us knew it yet. He said that his ship would never be the same. When my 40 machines had reached into the Talon of Sev and then withdrawn, they had left something behind. Not a weapon, not a trap, something stranger. His ship's single great mind, the perfect unified core that every Korath vessel was built around, had brushed against the wild distrust of a human ship, and had caught a single new idea from it, like catching a cold from a stranger. For the first time in the history of Korath engineering, one of their ships had learned to doubt itself, to keep a second opinion, to question its own certainty before acting on it. Sevran did not know whether to call it damage or a gift. He only knew that the most reliable machine his people had ever built now, occasionally paused, considered, and changed its mind, and that he had never in his life felt so uneasy or so oddly newly safe. The council did not punish me. There was nothing to punish me for, and the records made that plain. They did not punish Sevran either, in the end, because Vera spoke for him, which no one expected. She said a man who has truly learned a lesson is worth more than a man who is merely punished, and that the galaxy would gain more from his understanding than from his disgrace. The Korath hated that, but they accepted it, because even the Korath had begun that day to learn the value of changing their minds. I should end the story there. It would be a clean ending. But there is one more thing, and it is the part that matters most, and I only learned it later, in private from Vera herself. After the hearing, she asked me to walk with her. We went out onto an observation deck where the whole field of stars hung close and bright, and for a while she said nothing. Then she told me why the Veil had really written the Threshold Accord. It was not, she said, because they had studied human ships and grown afraid of them. It was because, long before humanity ever reached the stars, the Veil had tried to build a ship the way we build ours. They had grown tired in those days of the weakness of a single mind, the way one good attack could capture a whole vessel. So they had experimented. They had built a fleet of ships with many minds instead of one, dozens of small distrustful systems, exactly the kind of thing we make without thinking, and it had broken them. The Veil are a unified people. One mind, one purpose is not just how they build their ships. It is how they are, all the way down. When they filled their ships with argument and distrust, the argument did not stay in the ships. It crept back into the people who flew them, the way our own ships have always crept into us, shaping us as much as we shape them. Their crews began to doubt, to split, to keep secrets from one another. A unity that had lasted 100,000 years began, ship by ship, to come apart. They tore the fleet down before it spread too far, and they have never built such a ship again. But they remember. The grief I had seen on Vera's face at the shipyard was the grief of a people who had glimpsed, for one terrible moment, what it would be to become like us. That is why I wrote the law, she told me, with the stars on her gray face. Not to protect you. You hardly need protecting. I wrote it to keep the rest of the galaxy from reaching inside your ships, learning how you build them, and trying to become you. Your strength is not a thing that can be borrowed. It can only be lived. You are made of distrust held together by choice, and you have survived it because you have always been this way. Any people who tried to copy it would not gain your strength. They would only lose themselves, as we nearly did. I have thought about that conversation every day since. I think about it now, standing on the bridge of the Pale Horse, looking at my ugly, patched, beloved ship, the worst built and most feared vessel in this whole quiet corner of the galaxy. Other species look at her and see a monster now, a thing that humbled a warship without a shot. They are wrong. She is not a monster. She is a crowd of frightened, stubborn little minds that I spend every day talking down, listening to, arguing with, and trusting just enough to fly. They were warned. The veil warned them for reasons even the veil could barely say out loud. I warned Sevran myself 3 times, in a voice he chose not to hear. Human vessels are unique, and that is the simple truth of it, and every species that ever tested one came away certain they would never do it again. But the regret in the end was never really about losing. Sevran did not regret testing my ship because he nearly lost his own. He told me so, the last time we spoke. He regretted it because, for the rest of his long, proud life, every time his ship pauses to doubt itself before it acts, he will remember the day a human freighter taught a perfect machine how to be uncertain. And he will wonder, as I sometimes wonder, whether the strangest gift one people can give another is the gift of no longer being sure. That is the warning. That is the whole of it. Reach into a human ship, and you will not find a weapon waiting for you. You will find something far harder to walk away from. You will find a mirror made of doubt, and you will carry what you see in it for the rest of your days. We are not the strongest thing in the galaxy. We never were. We are only the one thing the galaxy was told, plainly and clearly and far too late, that it should never, ever test, and now you know why.